What are words? I mean, that seems like an odd topic to cover because you know what words are. You use them every day. But I think there's something spiritual and special and universally fundamental about words. After all, a god cannot exist without a sign or signifier to identify it. And don't talk to me about Tao, because you named it. You know you had to name it to communicate it to other people. You can't just tag on, it's nameless, but we named it. So don't at me, philosophers from 1,000 years ago. And I think that words are almost so fundamental as to be a subdivision of reality, like atoms or molecules. They're almost the quanta of human consciousness. And I believe if you understand words, then you understand the totality of human experience. You see, different words have different weights. The first video in this series was on utopia, which is a massive word with an incredible amount of weight. It has much more weight than, say, the word and or the or rock. I guess I should have started with rock. That would probably be less confusing. Because a rock generally has physical weight, but it has less semantic weight. Well, maybe the Blarney Stone has more semantic weight because it's a stone that legend says if you kiss it, you acquire the gift of gab or great skill with words. See, it all connects in my mind. There's a fundamental relationship between words and how we express and interpret truth. And truth is something that I've been talking about a lot in these last few videos. But now I want to talk about words, especially in the context of religion and great belief systems and socioeconomic systems like socialism and communism and capitalism. Because I think that what gives words power is what explains everything that we experience in society. And the question I have to ask is, without words, would there be any of these constructs? At a basic level, words are the fundamental way to communicate the structures in our brains. They're how we program each other. They're how we take the pathways in our minds and put them into other minds. And they grow into these little semantic trees, or cortical columns. Your neocortex is like a forest of these cortical columns, or semantic trees. See, these trees are intrinsically tied to meaning. Words represent pieces of an internal map, indices for the lookup table of the mind. And the mind is partitioned by words. These words are buckets for meaning. The more value a word has to you, the more weight it has, the more connections that link back to it. Your brain is like a highway that your consciousness flows down, and similar concepts are linked physically to each other. Or rather, what fires together wires together. And some words are more important than others. Your name, for example, or the name of your god or god seems to be hubs or roundabouts for the highway of light that is your mind. Don't worry, these are all metaphors. Which, by the way, what the hell is a metaphor in the brain if not just a linking of disparate words? Now, words are not stored the same in your brain as they are in mine. There's no singular location. They are distributed and repeated such that damaging one section of the brain does not make an individual forget an entire concept. Though a singular concept may be localized in a cortical column, it is repeated across the neocortex. We can learn a map of an individual brain and where certain words are stored, but it may change over time. And when I say these lines, which I've reviewed many times in hope of refining their meaning, it produces a thought in your head. When I'm writing, I'm constantly predicting your interpretation of my words. That doesn't change the thought that's in my mind, but my editing is based on my perception of what words mean to others, which is incomplete. I can only communicate as well as I understand what words mean to you. I try to be as precise as possible, but there's really no guarantee of creating the same thought in my head as is in yours. We sort of forget that, especially online. We assume that when we're communicating, the other person fully understands us. There is this general assumption that if we speak the same language, the same meaning will arise from a sentence, but this is not true. If I say the word tree, you may imagine a deciduous or a coniferous tree, or you may imagine a data structure like a binary tree. or you may imagine a cortical column. The thought that comes to mind is likely to have some relevance to your current semantic context, or what was already on your mind. I like to refer to this as the semantic temporal context, as the concepts may be encoded slightly differently in another section in your brain. And your interpretation of the words I say is very dependent on that context and what parts of your brain get activated and when. And a big reason that I'm talking about this is the number of different ways that I've seen people interpret my last few videos. Certainly, I'm connecting disparate parts of different brains. I'm trying to help people see the world in new ways, but I'm always fascinated how people either critique or celebrate an idea they've constructed after hearing my ideas, which isn't exactly what I was trying to communicate. Because then I have to say, you misunderstood me, at which point they usually double down and insist what they interpreted was what I was trying to communicate, even though I'm saying, no, it's not. Because they're satisfied in their moment of critique. Or they become very attached to this new idea that they've manifested in their mind, which often is a very good idea, but not necessarily the one I was trying to communicate. So it is best if we remember that communication is incomplete. It is best that we remember that while we share a language, there's no way to ensure the meaning of words in my mind is exactly the same as in yours. When you speak, you are converting some abstract activation of a neural structure. You're distilling an electromagnetic distributed excitation of a body of cells into a linear set of keystrokes or air vibrations. Really, there is such an infinite distance between the thought in my mind and the one that arises in yours. And when we truly consider that distance, it's almost a lonely experience. So we push that thought out of our mind, preferring to assume that we fully understand instantly every sentence that we read. So when you read something online, pause and try to imagine other ways you could interpret that thought. Because there's no guarantee that those words meant the same to the author as they do to you. So what do you think? Can you even perfectly express what you are thinking? How large of an audience are you imagining when you're forming your words? Certainly, anyone can stumble across your comment and interpret it dramatically differently than you intended. Is it really even possible to communicate to the totality of all English speakers who may read your comment? Do your best to let me know your thoughts in the comments.